Hi, it's Abbey Dyer Aminette, female entrepreneur coach and success strategist. Welcome to another episode of the Lead with Positivity Vodcast, where every week we bring female entrepreneurs that are showing up big in their communities and putting their ideas into action. Today, I want to welcome Tatiana Vilarea, and let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Vilarea. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for doing this. And I am a trauma-informed, trauma-educated hypnotherapist. I like to stress this part, and a coach, and I like to stress this part because what we're going to be talking about today is directly related to. So yeah, there is a lot of extra knowledge that trauma background that I have brings into the coaching and hypnotherapy world. And I would be happy to dive in and discuss it all with you today.
Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start your business.
So I work with entrepreneurs, with female mostly. I have some male clients, but it has to be the right match. It's harder with males. But I work with, as a hypnotherapist and coach, I work with female entrepreneurs. All right. And what motivated me to pivot to this, originally I work with trauma, as I said, is my personal journey. Because I had a huge transformation with emotional healing and physical healing, and actually a medical injury that I was able to rewire, because what hypnosis does, one of the amazing things that it does, it helps rewire the neurocircuitry and neural pathways, right, in the body. So I had this amazing healing, and I wanted to share it with the world and change the lives of other women. And I started my business. And then all the blocks and all the self-doubts and all the imposter and everything started coming out. And my biggest one was actually, and this is what I wanted to share with you, was the fear of visibility. And when I realized how deep is the deep and how much it was tied to my trauma, I realized that I can't just fix it with mindset. And I was paralyzed in fear. I could not even, this would not be possible even a couple of years ago. And I could not even click record myself, let alone go live or speak and give interviews and like publish my work, right? And when I overcame it for myself, and I see and know the difference, and when you know, I now make it my mission, my purpose to share it. I know that you are passionate about helping women lead. Well, we're on the same page here, because I understand that there's no leadership without visibility, and the fear of visibility, especially when it's not just a lack of confidence, but that animal kind of fear, that paralysis, or like my vocal cords would close. This is so limiting, and it limited my growth, my sales, everything. All right. And marketing, obviously, and showing up as the expert and sharing my amazing modality that I created. And as a result of all this struggle, and I wanted to bring it out to the world, and I had to overcome it. And so I made it my purpose to now share it with others and help other women shine and step into their authority and expertise.
That's fantastic. And yes, definitely. One of the things that I see often with clients that I coach is trouble with wanting to be visible and wanting to be on video and wanting to do lives. And we absolutely want to learn from whatever tips that you can share with us in how you've done that in your journey. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspires you the most in your business?
Well, the work with confidence and visibility. And why I combine the two is because I realize that one goes right side to side, side by side with the other, right? The imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the confidence, and fear of visibility are so connected. And most people don't realize how deep it is. Because if we even look at the kind of the 5 pillars of business, right? It is our expertise, our marketing, our sales, our business strategy, and our visibility. And I say visibility as the 5th one, but really it's the first one, because without visibility, if we are afraid of exposure, if we hold deep trauma in our body, And the trauma can be family, childhood, transgenerational. Look at what happened with women historically and transgenerationally, and all that which we hold. Psychology would teach us it's about the brain, but what I realized, and that it's about the mindset. But what I personally realize, and what makes me wake up every morning passionate about what I do, is because that fear and the sense of unsafety, and therefore the fear of exposure and the fear of visibility because it's a threat, it lives in our body. It lives in our neurocircuitry. And so I was on a mission to solve it for myself. And when I did, and then I work with women with trauma, and some of them were entrepreneurs. And I saw how this deep emotional healing and trauma work transformed their safety. And we're talking about all sorts of trauma, and especially for a lot of women, it's sexual trauma, known or unknown, right? And deeply suppressed. And all of that, of course, affects visibility. And so then it affects sales and marketing. Some women, and you might know, think that we are lacking self-confidence, or we hate sales, all right? Or maybe we are avoiding marketing. But if we dig deep enough, so many times what I find in the sessions in the hypnotherapy, especially when we go deep and go into the body memory, and the method I developed is all about that. And of course, the subconscious, we discover that underneath it all, it's not the fear and the resistance to sales, but it is the visibility fear.
You very much are talking about many of the things that female entrepreneurs are challenged with, right? But maybe on the surface, right? Those are the things that we relate to not feeling comfortable with. But as you expressed, there's a lot to that, right? Underneath that we don't necessarily even understand. So tell us a little bit about how you work with your clients, and how you help people make that transformation. Sometimes when they don't even realize that that's something that they're holding on to.
Well, this is a great question, because this is why I combine the work with the subconscious mind. And of course, I add the coaching, because we have to first be aware, and awareness and recognition is the first step, right, to change. And then in the hypnosis, which I combine with the coaching, right, we actually, the way we work with the subconscious mind and with the body memory. So I literally developed this methodology based on my own struggle with that paranoid panic attack, like collapse on the floor and die kind of feeling. Camera, public speaking, I could not even open my mouth. I could not even say a word. It was so paralyzing. And how can you sell or market this way, right? So back to the ways and the methods. I had to develop a step-by-step process and methodology. And then after I did that, I looked back and kind of generalized and see what it is that I did. I realized that despite our belief that it starts with the mind, before it became all about that male dominant approach to hypnosis and therapy and psychoanalysis, it was all created by males. But if we look historically, what indigenous people knew, how they did the healing, they respected the body's intelligence, and the body remembers everything. We run the neurochemistry and neurocircuitry of the body. And so when I work with my clients, I use a methodology that I developed that can be done by literally a 5-year-old. And it involves working with the body memory. The body shows everything, and with 2 of the brain hemispheres, because the fear has to be untrapped with both. A lot of people think it's only the amygdala, but it's also actually our right brain hemisphere, because a lot of the suppressed emotions would be connected with that part of our brain. And so all of it combined literally with the tools that can be done by a 5-year-old. And mind you, I don't work with children, but I could, because this is so simple. And it was an intuitive and of course knowledge base and trauma education and everything combined, and everything I've studied for over 10 years. I brought it together and I left what works and disregarded what doesn't. And it creates real-time transformation. And what took me years now takes sessions. And this is in short. Yeah.
And very exciting work, right? Really transformative type work. So when you think about kind of the complexities that female entrepreneurs have, because they are balancing, as you know, right, a business, right?
Mhm.
Often families and other types of obligations. What do you think some of their biggest struggles are to reach out and ask for this kind of help?
Well, as a sign of trauma, actually, the very consequence of trauma is our lack of ability to ask for help. And that self-resilience and being stoic and like, I'm going to do it because it's survival, right? And a lot of people, and maybe I should mention that, that people think that trauma is something like a war in some country somewhere or an assault. But trauma is anything that overwhelms our nervous system. So this is what I mean, the definition of trauma. So it's deeply individual. And a lot of it is like regular childhood experiences that we had as children, even those turned into some traumatic memory in our body and subconscious because we didn't get support at that time. So a lot of my female clients had uh, insignificant to their brain and mind and perception now events at school or with their siblings, and we're not even speaking about bullying, that made them hide, that made them self-doubt. And there's a generational, transgenerational, intergenerational component of it. Like I often say, like with disability, a lot of times it's trauma and hiding, right? But for example, with self-confidence and self-doubt, a lot of it is that people who raised us, we are very collective. You work with women, right? You know that we are deeply connected to the tribe, to the collective, not like thousands of years ago, but still, we go to the bathroom together.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And that's actually done out of safety as well, historically, right? So
Interesting.
it's so subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So that sense of safety and hypervigilance and everything. And so a lot of it with the confidence piece comes from the fact that the mothers who did not have that self-worth, and nobody taught them, they could not teach us. And so unless we work with transgenerational trauma, we can't really go to the core. We can patch up all the sorts of kind of coping strategy. That's what traditional, conventional, male dominant therapy approaches would teach us. But as women, I think it's so time, it's like beyond, like it's past due for us to go back to the body and to the wisdom that we carry and respect that there is fear and all of this lives in us. And we can't just patch it up and say, oh, it's done. And the more we resist it and ignore it, the more it persists. So I'm kind of that type of therapist that shows you and helps you dive deep, and it doesn't re-traumatize the person because of the ways how I work. Like we don't talk about the trauma and what happens. That's not the purpose. But I'm all for showing how deep is the deep. Let's deal with the root cause, and it transforms everything, not just the business, right? Not just the whatever the marketing, whatever the fears, whatever the visibility we have, but everything, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. I find this so incredibly interesting and helpful in the sense that it's so complex, right?
Yes.
Those conscious and subconscious memories that we have from especially those things in childhood that seem so inconsequential, and they do as adults, right? We're like, why would that have been something that bothered me? But it does, and people carry it with them their entire lives. And I think the work that you're doing is just so powerful, to be helping women, and again, not reintroducing the trauma, That for me is something that really resonates. So you do, again, really powerful, deep kind of work, especially with
Try.
tell me how you stay motivated, and you stay positive when you're sometimes dealing with really difficult kinds of situations and conversations.
I do believe that everything that we experience in life is an opportunity for growth and reflection. So I use exactly same tools, right? I use exactly same tools, exactly same process. And you're correct when you say it's complex when we don't have the education and when we are not those specialists who work with us. So for on the receiving end, it sounds and feels overwhelming, but a good specialist who knows the complexity doesn't make this complex, does not like kind of just push this complexity on the client. The client comes and we know how to guide it, and the client just kind of like, oh, I had this relationship with my mom that hurt for 40 years. For some of my clients who my clients like 40, 50, 60, right? So the trauma is long term. And in a couple of sessions, and they say it doesn't have that, like, you know how you say it doesn't have the emotional charge? It doesn't have the emotional charge anymore. Like, I don't cry anymore. So the complexity, it's only complex when we don't have the background, but it's not as complex when we are in the right hands and when the tools are meant for the job. So my motivation comes from everything I've gone through. I did a live in my group today. Like, a client asked me a similar question yesterday. And I said, I really don't have a problem with motivation because I've gone through so much, from developing cancer at age 21 to medical injury after the surgery, after, when I was trying to heal it. And then a life as an immigrant who came with $350 in my pocket. And then the business that was my dream, but then I didn't know what to do. I almost quit it like a million times. Probably know how it feels, right?
Yes.
The roller coaster.
Yes.
So the emotional tools that I teach my clients in combination with the deep work I do, I teach the tools so they don't depend on me. It's not the purpose, right? So those tools and the knowing that I'm kind of like imprinting the code onto the client and know that they change his lives. So it will be a waste for me to just waste all my own deep
Learnings.
learning. Yes, let's call it let's put it, yes, learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am most touched by people who really use their experience to fuel their business, right? And you absolutely do use your own personal experience and your training, right, to improve the lives of other women. And that's really amazing. So if you had one last piece of advice that you would give other female entrepreneurs that, again, are on that road and have wanted to quit a million times but haven't, what would that piece of advice be?
So my advice would be, if you have tried and studied all the strategies and know all the right marketing and know all the right business tools, and you invested heavily, but there is still a block or two or three, and it's like that invisible wall. I call it fighting a windmill, and guess who's going to win, right? So if you feel that there is something that you can't quite grasp, and there is some ceiling, there is some block, and it's not going to go away because you already tried learning all the marketing, and those blocks are actually preventing you. It's like that domino that is that last piece, that secret ingredient is within. So the advice would be to, maybe it's like, to take a break. I'm not saying not to use strategy. Absolutely have to, right? So it's a business. But if you've tried everything and it's still a struggle, especially if it's a struggle with visibility, with sales, with saying that price on the sales call, or even making posts or visibility, like going live, or maybe you hired a virtual assistant because you don't want to show up on your own. A lot of women that even hide behind their brand and their virtual assistant.
Interesting.
That's what I discovered over my work with clients, right?
Sure.
So maybe it's time to pause and invest the time and the effort into diving deep and figuring out what the root cause is, and then see that everything, like all that strategy, all that visibility, all the branding, everything that strategic marketing and business, all the tools, they will work so much better when we no longer hide, when we are just, our real authentic selves. We don't wear masks, and everything just clicks together, and our business skyrockets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been one of my favorite interviews, and I have done a bunch. So thank you so much for being
Thank you
here,
so much.
sharing your story. Thank you for joining us on the Lead with Positivity Vodcast, where action-taking female entrepreneurs are showing up big in their communities and telling their stories as only they can. If you liked this story, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.